Hey YouTube, welcome back to another video. Today guys, I'm going to be showing you how to clean the Smith and Wesson Model 637, but this applies to any revolver in general. So whether or not you have this exact pistol, then it shouldn't make too much of a difference. There might be slightly different components based on which type you have, but for the revolvers that slide open, then this is the tutorial for you. So obviously, the first thing you always want to do is make sure the gun's unloaded. Like I said, I usually keep the little ring in there just to assure myself that there's nothing in there, but it doesn't hurt to look down the chambers and see if there's anything inside there, which you can see light in all of them. So there's nothing going on there. Now, one of the things that I'll usually start off doing is giving everything a bunch of oil. Now, there are a lot of spots that you can put the oil in that will really help the gun maintain itself and last a lot longer. Now, it is important that you clean your gun every time you use it. I've got a few friends who will use their guns a time or two and then clean them on like the third or fourth time. And it's not something that will absolutely destroy your guns, but if you do that for long enough periods of time, then it could definitely start damaging your firearm. There could be a lot of corrosion and other stuff that gets trapped inside there. It could put pits inside your barrel and other spots of your gun. It's just not something you want to have happen. So I always recommend every time you take your firearm out, or even if it's been a long time, if it's been 6 months since you've touched it, it doesn't hurt to get it out and just oil it up to make sure everything inside is working properly. So to begin with, there are a lot of spots that we're going to clean, but what I want to do, like I said, first is get a bunch of oil put inside of here so it can kind of soak in and start doing its job. Now, this isn't terribly dirty. I've recently cleaned it, but I wanted to make a video on this, so I figured I'll go ahead and clean it again. If it is super dirty, you can use solvent if you feel the need for it, but pretty much most of the times I'll just use oil, unless it's really, really dirty. So I'm going to go ahead and put this rag down here. You can see it's just completely covered with all kinds of grease and oil from before. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the hops oil. And if you guys have REM oil or any of the aerosol spray oils as well, that stuff works too. This is just what I have here. I probably should pick up a spray can. It would make this part a little bit easier. But as far as where I oil, one of the first places I put it is inside of the barrel, just right up in this area. I kind of put it... let me move this so you can kind of see a little bit better. But I kind of put it up in the barrel area around here, and then it will start breaking down some of the gunpowder and residue that's kind of already accumulated up on the front there. Also, I'm going to go ahead and put a bunch of oil inside of this area here, and I'm going to push the extractor pin in a little bit while I do it so that it can kind of push the oil through the insides of that as well. And same thing on the back end here. I'm going to put a little bit of oil there and then run that through there. So now the oil is fully saturated inside there. If there's anything inside there, it's going to kind of break it down a little bit, and then we can kind of clean all around here in a little bit. So those are the primary oil spots. You can also put oil inside of the rest of the gun. Now, every now and then, I will put a little bit of oil inside of the firing pin area, just to make sure that there's nothing inside there that's rusting, because you can't really see any of the internals on this. This isn't a hammer fire gun. It's actually a frame-mounted firing pin. So the firing pin is not actually on the hammer itself. It's inside the frame. So you can't really see what is going on inside there. So sometimes it's nice just to get some oil in there, as well as some of these other components as well. As far as oil goes, that's typically most of the spots that I put it. Sometimes if I feel like it's been a long time, I might put a little bit of oil down inside there. You got to remember, these things are machines and they are metal, and the more oil and stuff you have inside of the gun, the less likely it's going to be to malfunction or corrode or have other problems. Now, you don't want to put tons and tons and tons in there to the point where it's dripping, because then you'll never be able to get it all out, and then you might go to pull this out and then the thing will be soaking wet. And of course, we're going to clean a lot of the oil off here in a second as well. I just want to kind of let it sit there for a little bit, let it work its magic inside there, kind of push things around, spin them, just move things around internally just to kind of get the oil really worked in there. Like I said, you don't want to have so much that it just pours out everywhere, but you want enough so that everything is definitely nice and oiled up. So I'm just going to pull the trigger a few times, pull back the hammer, and it feels really smooth. There's no grinding or grit or anything like there, so I know there's not a ton of debris anywhere inside. Like the trigger mechanism, everything feels really smooth. If there is grittiness to that, I mean, there could be stuff inside there, so maybe if you had some canned air, you might be able to blow some of that out with that. Although once you add the oil, it's not really going to come out. So if you do have a lot of grit in there, like if you were out where there's a lot of sand or dust or dirt or something like that, and you do feel a lot of grit in there, I would recommend trying to blow some of that stuff out before adding the oil, because like I said, once it's in there, it's going to cake on there, and it's not really going to want to come out of there. So, I mean, like I said, I just cleaned this the other day, so I feel like it's kind of sat long enough, and I'm just going to go ahead and wipe the majority of the oil off that's on the outside, just to make it a little easier for us to handle. You can leave a little bit of oil on here. It's not going to hurt it, but I typically will remove most of it, because you don't, like I said, you don't want to have your gun super greasy or, you know, covered in grease, so when you go to use it, it's too slippery or anything like that. So I'll spend a little bit of time here just kind of going over the entire thing, and then we'll get into actually cleaning some of the other parts inside of the gun. So I'm just going to rub this down there, and I mean, that should be good enough. I'll probably get a little more once we start running some pads through here. But as far as oiling goes, that's usually what I'm going to do there now. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the individual chambers as well as the barrel itself. This gun, like I said, it was recently cleaned. If you want to, you can grab a brush, a wire brush, and you can run it through the barrel as well as the chambers if it's really, really dirty. This one really isn't, but I mean, I'll run it through just to be sure. I mean, sometimes there could be stuff in there that you can't really see, so it doesn't really hurt the firearm. There we go. Got all 5 cleaned, and now I'm going to come in from the front and just push the brush through there as well and pull it back. So, I mean, you don't have to run it through a ton of times. I mean, basically, you can run it through, look down in there, see if there's anything that's still caked on that, and if there is, if you see pieces of metal or lead or anything inside there, then you could run it through a couple more times. But like I said, this thing is pretty clean, so I'm going to leave it at that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run a few pads through there that are going to be soaked in oil, just to try to get off any pieces of debris or gunpowder or anything that may still be left on the firearm. So to do that, I just put a cleaning rag inside of the little holder there, and I'm going to put a little bit of oil on each ends of the pad, make sure it's nice and coated on there. And from this point, I'm going to just run it through each of the barrels, giving it a little twist, and you can see that there is some residue still on there. I mean, you can clean a firearm day in and day out, and you're always going to be able to get a little bit of this unless you give it a super, super deep clean, which I typically never really do unless I know the thing's going to be sitting for a long time. But, you know, that rarely happens. I mean, why have a firearm if you're never going to use it? So there we go. So we've got it through each of the barrels, and we're just going to put it through here as well. And you can see, even though this gun was cleaned, there's still a lot of dirt or a lot of gunpowder residue and stuff left inside of it. Now, that's not the only spots that I'm going to clean. What I'm going to do real quick is I have this little brush here. It comes with my kit. It's like a little toothbrush, basically. And what I'm going to do is there's a few spots on here that I'm going to take this to. On the bottom of the barrel here, there's always a lot of gunpowder that kind of builds up there. So I'm just going to take the brush and kind of just run it around here, just kind of like I'm brushing my teeth a little bit, changing directions, motions, you know, go in a circular motion, go back and forth, up and down, just to try to really get that area clean. And then I'm also going to turn the gun and do the same thing from over here. So, I mean, you can't really hurt this. This is a plastic brush, so it's not going to do any real damage to the gun. So I'm just trying to get this area clean, because this is the forcing cone there that forces the bullets into the barrel and then out. So, I mean, it probably won't do too much performance-wise, but, I mean, it never really hurts to have everything cleaned up for you. Another spot that I'll often scrub with the little brush is the backside of the barrels here. Just basically, I want to, you know, get any of that extra gunpowder and stuff scraped off there, because this is where a lot of your debris and your gases will release around here. It's not a huge gap, but there is still enough of a gap that some stuff will get out here. and the more that we clean off, the less likely it's going to be to get inside of the extractor rod and kind of gum anything up there. So it's looking pretty good there. And then if it's really dirty as well, you can also push this back here, and you can go ahead and start cleaning under there with the brush. Like I said, I don't do this often, only if it's been a while or if it's very dirty. It's like if I use cheap ammunition and it's got a lot of powder and stuff left everywhere. That's pretty much all I'll do. And if there's a lot of residue back here as well, you can kind of hit that with the brush. Basically, anything that's dirty, you can go ahead and run a brush through it, or a brush on it, just to make sure that it's clean. So I'm going to grab another rag here, and I'm just going to use this one by hand for a second. And what I'm going to do is just kind of, need a little more oil than that. But what I'm going to do is those spots that I just hit with the brush, I'm going to take this rag, and I'm going to kind of rub it around the area to try to pick up anything that we might have knocked loose. So just kind of rub around in this area there, and you can see that there's a little bit of black that came off of that there. Also, you know, the back side here and underneath this as well. Like I said, it's typically not very dirty unless you're shooting it for a long time or using dirty ammunition. But, I mean, overall, everything looks pretty good now. This rag is still pretty clean. You can see there's some black that kind of rubbed off onto it, but that's good. That's all that much less stuff that is no longer left on the gun itself. So I'm going to put a little more oil on this rag. I'm going to run it through just one more time through each of the chambers here and then the barrel, and we should be pretty much done. So once I get that there, that's pretty much all of them, and I'm going to run it through the barrel again as well. And you can see in a second here that even though we just ran another rag through, there's still a lot more that came off on that. So compared to a nice clean rag, you can see that there was a lot more that we got off there. And like I said, you can just sit there and do that all day, and you'll get a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. You know, you could break some stuff loose. Then, you know, it's how clean do you really want it to be, and do you really need it to be. One last thing that I forgot to oil was this little area down here. I mean, I think I got enough on there anyways, but I'll just put a little drop on that and then kind of close it and open it a couple times just to make sure it's fully worked in there. Any parts of your gun that move are parts that should definitely be oiled, because they're, like I said, it's a machine, it's metal. Anything that rubs will rub, and it can wear on the gun itself. There's just a lot of stuff that can get caked up, so the more oil you keep in there, the less likely it is to corrode and have other issues as well. So that's pretty much everything that I'm going to cover here. Like I said, we're not going to tear this thing down completely and, you know, clean all the internals or anything like that. I mean, I rarely have ever done that, unless there's something really wrong with the gun. I mean, for the most part, just doing a quick field strip like this will get the gun in a condition where it'll pretty much work 99% of the time. Like I said, it's a rare case where you ever really need to tear the gun down to that level. And honestly, I don't even really feel comfortable doing that a lot, just because there are so many parts in there that are very precision, and it's very possible that you could damage stuff if you don't know what you're doing. So I usually leave that to the professionals and just do the field stripping and cleaning like this on my own. So now you can see we've got pretty much all the oil off there. Everything inside this is working perfectly. There's no grit, there's no grime. It's very smooth trigger pulls, and the gun is now in perfect working condition. So now it's ready to go back on the shelf or in your pocket or whatever you plan to do with it. Maybe even take it to the range, although you just spent all this time cleaning it and now you're going to take it to the range. But, you know, that's your guys' decisions. But that is how I clean my revolvers, and if you guys have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments area. I will try to respond to as many as I can, and if I don't know, then I will try to do some research and see if I can find out for you. But I hope you guys found this video interesting and entertaining. Hopefully everything in here wasn't too dry. I mean, a lot of stuff, gun cleaning in general is pretty similar. It just varies a little bit depending on model and style. But with that, guys, hopefully you had fun, and if you did, I would appreciate if you hit that like button if you liked this video, and subscribe for more videos like this, as well as other types of videos. So thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a great day. Goodbye.